All right, well, welcome back to this week's episode of the Archive Podcast. And today we're diving into systems and morning routines and all this stuff.
Yeah.
is that a fair category?
I think we'll start driving and see where the road
where
the road goes. Because I don't think either one of us really have an idea of the direction we're going.
Yeah, and we're already off to a great start with analogies.
But I did say at the end of the last episode, and it stays true today, this is something I am passionate about because I believe the small systems practices every day just kind of compound into big things over time. So
yeah, and so let's move right into it. Systems are there. I think about James Clear, Atomic Habits, and he talks about you don't rise to the level kind of your aspirations, but you fall to the level of your systems, especially in stress. And I don't think that stress is always a bad thing. I think that there's obviously stress, right? I think it's like EU stress, but the idea is that it's a good thing. It's a motivating thing. It's a good pressure that causes us to want to achieve. But in that achieving is oftentimes where, at least I ran into it first, where you start to kind of bump up against what you're currently doing. Mm-hmm. Two categories I think we can speak to directly is the category of things that are tools. They're the applications you use on your phone, your computer. Mm-hmm. They're the tools that you use in communicating with clients. But then there's also the systems of how you take care of yourself. So if you got to choose, where would you want to choose for us to start today?
I'm going to lean where I like talking about, and that's the practices of ourself.
Okay, let's go there then. Okay. So, all right, it's a new day. What time are you waking up? And walk me through what your morning routine looks like.
And here's how I'm going to approach this too. I'm going to approach it as if these are the things I'm doing when things are going good.
Okay.
Because there's a direct correlation when I'm not doing these things are not going as good.
Understood. Yeah.
And that's the whole point of this episode and why I'm passionate about it, because that's something I've learned over the last few years. And I'll use this analogy. Two of the things I really love doing, and I've always been into one of these, but bow hunting and golf. And I think there's a correlation between both, because, if you're playing golf, I played yesterday, and before every single shot, what you're doing is going through this checklist of things that can consistently be good shot to shot. So I know you're not a golfer, but what you do, you get over the ball, and in my mind, I've got a routine of steps that by the end of those steps, what should happen is I'm putting myself in the best situation to hit the best shot. Now, here's the flip side of golf is you can only control what you can control. So yesterday I was playing, there was some wind. So even though I was going through the steps, doing what I always do every single shot, I was why is the ball going that way a little bit more? Well, it was because of the wind, and that's one of those things I didn't really factor in because it's not one of those things I can control. And the same thing with bow hunting. I love following this bow hunter, Cameron Haynes, and what he talks about a lot on his podcast are the variables that you can control. And if you are off a millimeter of those variables, those steps that you go through, right? If your hand is just half inch farther back, half inch farther forward, it affects the trajectory of the arrow. And so that's what I think is really true for our everyday life. We can only control what we can control. And if we do those things, we set ourselves up just a little bit better, even though some things are going to happen that we don't see coming, but we set ourselves up a little bit better. Before I go into my routine, you got anything
I think
to add?
I think it's spot on. I think the importance of what you're talking about is neurological pathways. Mm-hmm. So, and again, I'm not an expert in this. It's just from what I've picked up and learned. The illustration I've always heard is for us, we live in a rural area. So when I say the term cattle path, mm-hmm. you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. You can have an entirely wide open field, a pond somewhere on it, but there's going to be a path well worn through the crops, not the crops, but the grass, right? Or deer tracks, right? So I'm going to go set up my deer stand here in about a month or so for deer season in November. and I know where they're going because it's a well-worn path. And so these systems for us serve as like a way, like we're not thinking about it. It's the same path we walk every day. Every time you step up to, swing the golf club, that's what you're doing. You're stepping up to do that. You're not thinking about it. You're right into that well-worn path. And by saying not thinking of it, you're not having to spend a lot of like mental energy,
Yes.
like going through the same thing. Like you just kind of flow through it.
Yes.
In the same way that someone's been flying a plane for 20 years is going through all the same checks that they always do. But there's a sense of familiarity. There's a sense of ease to it, and it almost becomes a way that they don't feel like they're going to fly safely, obviously, without it, right?
And Casey Neistat mentioned this whenever he was vlogging, and they did a tour of his studio, and the person that was directing the tour, and they're like, why do you have everything like so particular? Like it looks like chaos, but it's actually, well, this is what Casey says, like it looks like chaos, but actually everything's super particular. And I know where everything is, because any moment I do not know where something is, that is energy I am wasting that could be spent elsewhere, or time I'm wasting looking for something that could be spent elsewhere. And so whenever I was younger, I was like, struggled with the concept of a routine, because in my mind, I didn't struggle with having a routine. I struggled with wanting a routine because I was like, that's boring. But as I've gotten older, what I've realized is it's just efficiency. That's all it is.
Man, so that's people joke about, like, I wear these black T-shirts every day.
Yep.
I have 5 of them. I ordered them off Amazon. I like how they fit. I don't have to think about it.
Yep.
And when I think back to, like, all of the years before, it's not that I don't take like pleasure in expressing myself through what I wear. It's just, for me, it's not a high priority. Like I can walk into almost any meeting with a black T-shirt, and it's fine, depending on what pants and shoes I'm wearing, which is pretty much always the same thing. I've got black joggers on today. They look like slacks. I've got a pair of Nikes on. But if I need to walk into a meeting and be a little bit more fancy, I've got a black, blazer that fits over the top of this. And so for me, though, that is the best example I can think of where I don't think about it.
Yeah.
And it's not that, my time is so valuable that I'm down to the second, but it's the energy that I invest. Because listen, man, in the mornings, we got gym, we got the kids that are getting off to school,
Yep.
Whit's getting off to school, all these different things. I want to spend zero energy thinking about what I'm wearing.
And I think that is one of the key factors that's really, really changed my perspective on this in the last year. Whenever you have a kid, man, you realize, like, it goes back to that thing of controlling what you can control, because the moment you have kids, it is totally out of the window at certain times, like, of what you can control. And so the easier we can do as dads, as business owners, and then as creatives, or just like normal people going about life, like the more time we can spend not worrying on things and be present with our kids, or be able to handle whatever task pops up, like with a kid, like it just makes our life a lot more efficient, a lot more easy whenever we take care of the things that need to be taken care of when they need to be taken care of.
Absolutely.
So I think that's like our main goal today, is just to talk about, like, we don't know what we're doing at times.
Absolutely.
But we've just come to the realization that we need to figure out and take care of those things that we can't control every single day.
Yeah. So let's jump into it.
Yep.
So walk me through a little bit of an overview of your morning routine. So it's not, everything that you do with your toothbrush, your toothpaste, but like an overview of, like, what are the things that you can call out and say, I have automated this. I don't think about it. It's just my system.
For me, the most important first thing is, like, always breakfast. Like, I can't, and I know some people are different, like, for me, and I think that's the special thing about a routine. It's all directly to every single person.
It's like personalized.
Yeah, it's so personalized. But I just want to share, like, what works for me. Breakfast, what breakfast works when it's all going great, that's like scrambled eggs and some, like, protein, like some turkey bacon. For me, that is, like, the first thing I can do to win the day is to make a healthy breakfast. And I know there's a direct correlation between, like, the good times in my life what was I eating during those moments? And I mentioned this in the last episode. Matthew McConaughey talks about it in his book a lot. He's a very routine person, and that really shocked me because he does like so many crazy things in his book, in his life. Like he's done but what he talks about is like he set himself up by doing the things that were kind of clicking, right? And he talks about in his journal, the things he would write are like, okay, when things were going good, here's what I was eating. When things were going good, like here's what I was reading. Things were going good, here's what the music I was listening to. And what he realized is when he was having bad moments in his life, he went back and read those journal entries of what was going good and what was I doing. Like, not what was I doing in life, like what was I doing in the morning by myself, like, you know. So for me, what I've realized over the last few years, whenever I eat that good breakfast, like I just set myself up a little closer to winning throughout the day. Do you want to bounce back and forth? Like,
Sure, yeah. So the first thing I do in the morning when I wake up is, it starts the night before. Mm-hmm. I've got all of my gym clothes already laid out, so I don't want to wake anybody up in my house. So it's like, 4:51 a.m. Mm-hmm. My watch starts vibrating. Get out, because I know that if I don't, my watch and my iPhone are disconnected, so I can't turn the alarms off from one or the others. So that's my insurance policy that
Nice.
I'm out of bed. But my clothes, grab them, they're laid out right there. Go into the kitchen. I've got and this is like, I have to simplify. I have my cup, I have my little spin mixer thing, and then I have my pre-workout sitting right there.
Nice.
So all I've got to do is put water in, mix it up, down it, use the bathroom, and then I'm out the door.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And then for me, most days right now, which I love, and it's only been the last month, so I can't speak into the effects it has on my life just yet. But come to the office, and either before that or during that, like I'm making coffee, and coffee is like the non-negotiable, right? Like coffee for me is it's the thing I go to sleep thinking about in the morning. Oh man. And it's like, it's so ironic. I bring this up on the one episode I don't have coffee. Like
Right.
I could go into a 10-minute segment.
And for the people, it's 2:30 in the afternoon. We're not drinking coffee at this point in the day.
Well,
I'm not, at least. I'd be up until midnight.
I would, but I've had double espresso and a 20-ounce black coffee today.
That's a big coffee, man.
Yeah. So that's a problem. I didn't want to make it a bigger problem. But on the way to the studio, what I've been doing, and I love this, is I think this is very important to some people to have I think just get on the right foot every single day. Like this is what I've loved about having a drive. So like we were working from our homes and didn't have that drive. And here's something I've found that I really love is like getting into the right headspace of like listening to something I enjoy. I think there's been a direct correlation just to grab some energy on my 15-minute drive here. It's like if I'm like lacking some energy, I'll throw on a song that is a little bit more upbeat, or maybe I'm just like, it's like a fall, like it's kind of feeling like fall now, so I'll like throw on something that feels a little bit more like fall, and then it gets me pumped up for fall. I just think it has such a direct correlation of like getting pumped up for the day. So that's my commute here.
Okay.
You wanna
So I hit the gym every morning. Our class starts at 5:30. We're done by 6:30. The reason that is so important to me, and so I've gone every weekday, and I say this because it's a big deal for me. I've never been an athlete in my life, but I've been every day since December 15th of 2023, and it's now August 9th, so every weekday. And that's been important for me because I've realized, so 2 weeks ago, I was working a conference all week long. It was the first week where I wasn't able, because I was out of town. I had taken my weight vest with me to get on the treadmill, but I mean, we were literally waking up at 5, 6 and working until midnight every night. So it just was one of those weeks I couldn't fit it in. And I didn't realize how much of a mental stress reliever that was. And so, man, that's super important to me. I'm around people I like. That class is like good people. And yeah, man, I think that kind of going back to what you said a minute ago about eating something right and setting you off on the right way, I have found that I feel so much better. I obviously feel stronger. I feel more fit. But man, I just feel good.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if I get that done, if I can wrestle with whatever that workout or that strength programming is for the day, then who knows, whatever else might come. Like the idea of, I love the methodology of this workout, kind of like it's CrossFit, but preparing for the unknown and the unknowable. Like I love that because you don't know what it is you're walking into that day, but you're going to wrestle with it and you're going to make it through. And so like, that's really important to me.
And I want to ask you this. So this is something that I've implemented a few times in my life over the last like 3 years. If I've ever like kind of feeling burnt out, what I've told myself is like, I will not do anything that day until I do something I love. And I don't always do that, but like, I kind of just use that as like and usually like when I'm feeling burnt out, it's like, I feel like I'm not having the time to do the things I love. So like, I'll implement that. Like I don't work until I do one thing I love. And in those moments it was running. Like I would run or work out, or something like that before I got into my work, because I felt like I was being selfish from myself and to my work in those seasons of life.
Yeah.
Like, what's your opinion on that? Do you feel like that is like a priority in everyone's day, and they should make it a priority of doing the things they love before they do the things they have to do, if there's like that burnout they feel?
So I can only speak from my experience. I have seen this. I'm able to do that in some seasons of my life, not able to do that in others. I think a lot of it is situational dependent, right? So if, for instance, if you have to report to work like really early in the morning, that might not be an availability for you. So you might have to figure out a different way of doing it. So what I'll say is, to your point, I think it's important to do something every day that gives you just a little spark of joy, right? And so, for instance, I'll give you this example. The last month, maybe a little bit more than a month, has been 16-hour days.
Yeah.
It's been in the couple-hour windows with my kids at night, a few hours if I can, and then right back at work.
Right.
And it's just this season every year is like this, and then it calms down. With that being said, I've had zero time to do anything like hobbies don't exist right now, things like that. So what I have found that works for me is if I can get about 12 minutes every day while I'm eating a meal somewhere in there, I'll turn on an episode of Ted Lasso and just eat, and I'm quiet. It's something I've enjoyed. I'm like on my 12th time through those 3 seasons. But that's all I need. And I can do this because I know, it's like my mom used to say, you can do anything for X amount of time, 6 weeks, 6 months, 3 years. And so what I have found is I know the season isn't going to last forever. Right. So perspective helps me to not get burnt out in this season where I just like all throttle forward. But so does just finding that one little thing each day when it's work, and when you're not doing work, you're spending time with your wife and kids, and when you're not spending time with your wife and kids, you're asleep. Yeah. Right? All I need is like that 12 minutes a day just to sit down, a few minutes to myself, and watch something I really enjoy like Ted Lasso, and I'm back at it.
See, I agree. Mine is like, it's usually always golf. Like for me, if like yesterday, I knew I have so much to do right now, but at the same time, I knew I needed a mental reset almost of doing something like I loved, just to give me that like almost it's kind of like an energy boost too. And the way I've thought about it, like why is that useful to my life? I'm wasting 4 hours not working, doing something I love. And this is what I've realized over the last few years. Like, no, what I'm actually doing is I am maximizing myself in the work when I am working, instead of feeling this like pressure almost that like kind of beats down when we have so much we have to do. Let me give myself that time. That way, like, I'm fully reset. So then the work I do when it comes time is fully efficient, fully maximized, full of energy. Like, there's clarity. That is why I think it's important to sprinkle in some things we love. Sprinkle in like one day a week. Hey, this is my day where I reset with my friends. This is my day where I reset with the things I love to do, because it's actually going to strengthen the other 4. It's not going to hurt the other 4 because I'm, losing time on that 5th day. No, it's actually just going to help maximize the efficiency on those other days.
I would say the best example that a lot of people I think can relate with is when you exercise, you think in your mind when you start, hey, this is taking up my time. But the crazy thing is that you get a 100% or maybe 150% return on that investment of time. Because instead of the afternoon slump, you're not hitting afternoon slumps anymore. And so I think there's a lot of wisdom to what you're saying, because, and listen, people might not have, my amount of time or your amount of time. Everybody's got different amounts of times, different situations that are going on. So what I would say is, if you're listening, like, listen to the principle of what we're talking about. Gather from the principle of what we're talking about, which is you do have to incorporate things in your life that you do love. If it's for 5 minutes a day, or some seasons of life where you've got time, man, spend a half a day. Spend a day doing something that fills you up. Because I think the idea of entrepreneurship sometimes, and people want to talk about like, it's hustle porn or all this stuff. Listen, that's not it. And I think that a lot of that accusation has been overblown. Here's what I know. From my experience, I would not have been able to get to where I'm at today, where I have more balance in my life, if I had not gone absolutely overboard earlier in my life. So there are going to be seasons of your life where you have to go nose to the grindstone, get the things done, so that you can back off later in life. It's just kind of the math of it.
Well, and not even sometimes later in life, like we became entrepreneurs to gain the freedom of time. Like, if there's a season where we have some downtime, we were talking about this the other day, I think there would have been a time in our minds where we thought, oh my gosh, like I don't have the clients right now. I don't have I'm not busy. Like that is the most grateful season like we have as entrepreneurs. Like, we've done the work the other busy months. Now you get to just live life and enjoy it a little bit. Like,
dude, I'll be honest with you. I took 4 full weeks off from work last year. So cumulatively 1 month. And I at first felt shame talking about that publicly, but then my thought was no, because let's examine the feeling. The examine the feeling is I'll feel judged because people will say what must be nice. And man, I'll be honest with you, the points in my life where I've said that, I've said, well, I look at someone else's life and I say what must be nice. First off, what I was feeling in that moment, if I came to terms with it, was I was feeling jealousy. Right? But the other part of it is someone else's win doesn't take anything away from us, right? And so I share that to say, like, no, you can start your own business. Like, if like young creatives or new creatives are watching, you can start your own business and you can reach a place where you can work to figure out, I want to maximize time with my kids because they're young. Or I want to maximize time with my partner. And I think there's a lot of, like, we need to start talking about these things that we enjoy the fruits of it, and it not to just be all this idea of like grind,
100%. So after I do my commute to work.
All right, I'm sorry. We got down a rabbit hole there.
I love it. I kind of like how this is going. We're stretching out this day like it's there's climax. So what I've found very useful, and we've had this conversation over the last year or so, is you and I both are people who we can perform for 4 to 5 hours a day on our put your head down, work at your computer and go. Anything more than that and we're useless, right? I mean, am I speaking correctly to if we have computer work, we're good for maybe 4 hours. But those 4 hours, oh my gosh, we could solve world hunger, it seems
Yeah, so I think a lot of that I would call out to Cal Newport's work. He has a book called Deep Work, a book called Slow Productivity, a ton of writing on the topic. And I love his concept of all of us have about, at our peak, we have about 4 really good hours of focused work. So I think it's important to point out right now, teachers, both of our wives have been teachers. If you're dealing with tiny people or people on a regular basis, that's not the type of focused work. So don't feel bad if you're well, man, I don't get focused work in my job. It's for those whose jobs are in the knowledge work kind of deal where you have to have focused time.
Yes.
You really only do have about 4 hours or several 90-minute segments. So yeah, I would agree with that definitely.
And so that is me in a nutshell. Now in my life, I get more done in 4 hours than I would have in 8 hours whenever I was 20 years old. And so for me, like the middle part of the day to the back end of like an afternoon is filled with very productive work. And I'm assuming like if this is a day I don't have a shoot, like that's what's going on. And what I found very useful during those hours are filling them with like 10-minute slots of entertainment that fires me up. And so recently, that might be watching a YouTube video on something to do with a setup. Like I've been infatuated and I've been like fully hooked on setups here in the last month or two because we have this studio we're trying to build out. And so in my free time, what's gotten me fired up to watch is like other people's studios. And so that's what I've been just kind of implementing in those 10 to 15 minute slots when I need a break from the computer. And even like saying some of this stuff feels like super new age. Like you need a break from your computer so you're going to watch your other screen. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't think it sounds new age. I think it's just admitting what everyone does already.
Right.
Like the amount of time, I love the statistic that comes out every year around like fantasy football season of the amount of lost productivity hours from like businesses in the US, like corporations. They do an estimated like loss.
Yeah.
And the reality is this happens.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of people in businesses, big and small, who do not do a lot of work anyways.
Yeah.
And so I think telling people who are a little bit more driven, a little bit more ambitious, perchance, who have a little bit more of a driving personality to work, hey, listen, it's okay to stop and like take a 15-minute break or take a short walk or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's all right. It's all right.
But I think that is like, that's been one of the most useful things for me is just kind of noticing when I need like just a mental like tiny reset during the day and allow myself to have that and being really intentional in that and not like going right back to work. Like, okay, I have a big edit day. If I said I'm going to give myself like a 15-minute break, give myself a 15-minute break. Like,
Yeah.
so that's something I've found super, super useful, and it's such a small little system to implement.
Yeah. So I would say on kind of the notes that we've been talking about so far, which are like morning routine oriented. Let's now break and go into what systems we use in our work life.
Yeah.
So in the work world, I think there are systems that over the years I've built that have helped me to be more productive or to be more thoughtful and engaging with clients. But before I launch into them, what are the things that like for you, you'd say, okay, listen, if you're new to this or you feel like you're maybe in your first year and you're drowning a little bit, are the helpful things to look at?
Can I hear what you want to say first?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So how about I'll give an example. Let's trade back and forth.
Okay.
First one is calendar. I live and breathe on my calendar. I use Fantastical.
Okay.
And so what I do is I map out all of my work obligations. So like that's meetings, it's Zoom calls, it's where I'm going to be. And then probably the most helpful tip I would have is beyond them being color coded between like different clients would be to have a family calendar. So I have one shared with Whit, so she knows, and this is like the biggest thing. If there's a special event, like the girls have like practice, or if they have a parent night or something like that, or if I'm going to be out of town in a way that affects our normal routine, like outside of the bounds of being there in the morning or in the afternoon, then I put that on there as well so she knows where I'm at.
Yes.
Because I don't always remember to tell her. So the calendar is really important. We have a business meeting every Sunday night where we sit down and talk about the budget and the calendar for the week. So calendar would be where I would say first.
I would agree. I was not the calendar guy a year ago. I am now the rookie into the calendar guy. So I'm on my rookie season still, but it is very useful. I was anti-calendar for a long time. I thought it was the stupidest thing ever, and then I got burned by myself because I was not the calendar guy.
Please tell me, did you double book a client? Or did you double book something? Or did you forget something? I think it's just
you have a wife and you say you're not busy. And
hypothetically.
hypothetically, you have this wife and you say you're not busy because you didn't put it in your calendar or you didn't have a calendar. And then what you realize the night before, wife had plans. You actually were busy because you didn't have a calendar, So you learned the hard way, and now I'm a calendar guy. That may just be a crazy example. I don't know if that's ever happened to anybody, but
Okay, but it was born out of necessity, right?
yes, it really was. And I still don't even love the calendar, but what I've realized is my life is so much more smooth and easy now that I've set just a simple little thing up where there's no confusion. That's the main thing.
So let me pause this and bring us back to the top of the episode.
Yes.
This is like the black shirt thing for me.
Yep.
It's offloading thinking.
Yep.
So your brain's not spending time thinking about anymore. That's the thing. I don't ever have to worry about where I need to be. Mm-hmm. If I have to be in Frankfurt, if I have to be in Indiana, if I have to be in Alabama, I just go where my calendar says to go. That means that my system of inputting those things is simple, right? If there's a meeting that comes up, as soon as it's agreed on, I don't put it off. I put it right there in. Everyone gets calendar invites because I don't want to show up to a meeting that someone else might forget about, right? So, making sure. And so really this is all about preventing extra thinking that shouldn't be. I don't want that in the back of my brain. I don't want that tab open. And then the other part is not wasting time, right? Okay, so another one that I use
let me say mine first.
Sure.
I just piggyback, but and this is a little bit of a curveball, I feel like, but this is what keeps me creative daily. I try to make it a goal of mine, and I don't always succeed, and that's okay, but I try to make it a goal of mine to post one thing to my Instagram story a day. And what that does is I need that just creative fire just to be lit with a tiny little match every single day, just for my own good, just to keep it going.
Just a little bit of a challenge.
Just a little bit of a challenge.
Yep.
That has been massive for me. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. Let me just post one little thing just to get that creative burn going that day. So
I love
that's
it, man.
been huge for me.
So another one that I would use is Notes, Apple Notes.
Mm-hmm.
So in college, that was right about the time Evernote was released for the first time. I know I'm dating myself saying that, but I've tried different applications over the years. Evernote, I've tried Notion, I've tried all the things, and I just always come back to Apple Notes because it's really easy. Mm-hmm. It's searchable, it indexes, it does everything I need it to do. I don't have to spend any money on it. And so what that allows me to do is just keep track of things. So I never go into a meeting without taking some type of note. And my system is simple. If it's something that I know that I need to pay attention to, if it's a key piece of information, it gets written down.
Yeah.
And then if I'm responsible for something, or if someone else commits to something, either way, I write it down. Because the last thing I want to happen is to let someone down on something I was supposed to do. And then if someone comes to me later on, it's like, hey, which one of us agreed to this? I know that I didn't forget to write it down for me. I know they committed to that part of it. And so Apple Notes syncs between all my devices, wouldn't leave home without it.
Yes. Another curveball from me right here. And this is probably 90% of the time before I ever will work at my computer here, I make sure my space is clean. I walked in today and I had a charger out that nothing was plugged into. I had a battery that was charged. I had some cords on my desk. I can't, my mind can't get decluttered unless my space is. Or my mind has been decluttered and I'm wondering why. Or it has been cluttered, and I've been wondering why, and it's because I look around, and it's just havoc. And so that is and I don't know if I got a little OCD. I'd say so, just a little bit.
A sprinkling of the neurospicy.
A sprinkling of it. But that has been so big for me, is just make sure my space is taken care of, and then my mind seems to be at ease. I think that's super practical.
I do too. I will say I'm trying to get better at that. Mm-hmm. You're inspiring me, and it's helpful to have someone to like you're modeling that for me. So it's very helpful for me to see someone living that out. My wife is the same way, and I always feel more peaceful when I come home to a house that's clean. And that's something that was a priority for her when we got married, over a decade ago. Wasn't for me, but I have learned, okay, I need to do the dishes or fold laundry or pick everything up because like both of us like coming home to that. And so we both tag team it, and it's really great. I'll say for me, the last like tactical tool or application or whatever that I use every day is a simplified approach to applications and systems. So here's what I mean.
Okay.
I know this is a little bit meta, like it's like a little bit outside of the thing looking back in, but I wouldn't say I'm a minimalist, but I would like to think like Greg McCowan's book, I'm an essentialist in a way, if I had to plant a flag somewhere. So I try to take the approach where what do I actually need for that day? And so it's the idea, the easiest way to describe it would be the pat down, right? Before you walk out the door, what do we all do?
Yep.
We make sure we have our phone, our wallet, our keys. And then you can pretty much get to where you're going, do what you need to do with that, right? But that is kind of the system, the overarching system that I try to think through is don't take more than I need and take what I need, right? And that approach bleeds into other things like I don't buy camera equipment that I don't need. I only upgrade when the thing that I currently have is getting in my way of doing the job that I need to do.
I'm going to hold you to this.
Okay, yeah, please.
Because when I see a big old package come in and you're like, dude, I found this, this new gimbal and it can
That's right.
sprint with you down 25 miles per hour.
Hey, listen, man.
And I'm like, what good is that? And you're like, I don't know, but I got it.
I welcome the accountability. Like, so for instance, the last month I've been really thinking about buying the Osmo Pocket 3. So my test for that was, okay, I'm going to use my iPhone for everything I would use that for, just to test out whether I actually want to buy it or not. And the reality is like, I just don't need it at this time. And so I'm just not going to buy that thing. And so the essentialism really kind of also pairs up with like stoicism for me. So, thinking through what are the even mental systems I think through. And you mentioned one earlier, and this is where I'll kind of land the plane for me. That essentialism comes really back to the point of, I think, a key principle of stoicism, which is something you mentioned earlier. I can't control the things around me, but I can control my response to them.
Yes.
And having just systems, routines, tools that we use, all of these things, I feel like really get summed up in that approach of, I want to make sure that whatever I do have control over is done to the best of my ability.
I love it. I'll land the plane as well. And I've kind of been going back and forth. Like I've been kind of going throughout my day and like, what's the most effective thing I do? It goes back to the first thing you mentioned in this episode, I believe, because it really has enhanced my business. I truly believe that, and it sounds so simple, but I took care of what I needed that next day, the day before. And it sounds so simple, but what I realized, and I think I'm speaking probably more to like the camera people right now, but whenever I made sure like all my gear was ready to go for the next day, what happened is I didn't wake up stressed. I didn't leave the door stressed. I didn't come back to the house stressed because I forgot something when I left the door. When I removed those things from the beginning of my day was already off to a good start because I wasn't even thinking. Like everything that I needed for that day was already taken care of yesterday. And this goes also to maybe things that I do, like when it comes to like a shoot, when it comes, and I'll approach it like this. Like if you have work that gets procrastinated, because that's something I struggled with for a long time, and it's actually not something I struggle with anymore. Like that is like one of the best things I can say today. Like I don't struggle with procrastination as much. I love how I threw it as much in there. But I really,
it's like a small caveat, just in case. It's an insurance policy.
But it's because I started setting myself up for the next day and the day after today, and maybe that looks like dumping footage. Maybe for someone else, that looks like taking care of the notes that you're going to talk about on Monday morning, on Friday afternoon or something, like just those little setups for the next day have completely changed my life, completely changed my business. It goes back to like you making your coffee or your protein shake or whatever, like the night before. it just compounds. And when you don't have to worry about that thing the next morning, you're just slowly just adding to the efficiency.
Yeah, you're stacking wins.
Yeah, and
man.
I think it sounds like crazy to talk about until you implement some of these things. Like you hearing someone say some of these things, you're like, whatever, man. But then when you realize, oh, I was stressed this morning because I was running out the door, I was already late, I didn't have things figured out. Well, why didn't you have things figured out? Because I didn't take care of them last night. Like, it really does stack wins that will make a difference down the road.
And I think that's a key point that I would land on is if you're watching this and you think to yourself, like, I don't need these things, that's okay. You might not need them right
And
now.
you're probably not listening at this point if you think that.
That's right. It's okay.
Yeah.
Everything is figure outable, right? My only encouragement would be to just keep an open mind, because there might come a time in your life where you do need a couple of systems and you look back on something like this or the plethora of other options out there. And so we've only come to these things because we needed them. They were things that were born out of necessity. So, all right, I have a question for you.
I love it.
Are you ready for next week's topic? I'm going to throw one out there.
Yeah, throw it. I'll catch it.
How to navigate difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it might not be even contentious conversations or like fighting.
Right.
I'm talking about how do we as business owners jump into those conversations about business?
Yeah.
Talking about things like contracts, money. So that's my thought for next week. How do you feel about it?
I love it, and I think we can maybe share a little bit about, like our conversation we had today. Like,
Yeah.
it was, a great conversation right on that topic. So
Yeah.
I love it. I had one more thing to say. Oh, I think this episode can almost be piggybacked at a later time as well. Like, I feel
Absolutely.
like there's some more systems that are really effective. And if you're still listening, man, like Rally Caps had a great podcast about the tools they use for efficiency and business that I highly suggest you listen to. But I think
And maybe that's
all
a
I
part two that we come back to here in a few episodes. It's like more specific on the tools thing
yeah.
that other people can adopt. Mm-hmm. Cool?
Cool.
All right. Guys, that's it for this week's episode of the Archive Podcast. Until next week,
Peace.
see ya.